We are very honored to be hosting Jean Thompson for her latest novel, The Poet's House, which has been winning raves from authors and critics alike, including Maureen Corrigan, who called it an absolute keeper, and Julia Alvarez, who called it a page-turning narrative with laugh-out-loud scenes, and ultimately a hopeful, affirming book about how words can stir the mystery in us. Jean Thompson is the author of 14 books of fiction, including Who Do You Love?, The Year We Left Home, and Wide Blue Yonder. Her work has been published in The New Yorker and anthologized in Best American Short Stories and the Pushcart Prize, recipient of a Guggenheim and National Endowment for the Arts Fellowships, and has taught creative writing at numerous universities. We are always honored when Christina Clancy is the conversation partner, because she does such a great job, and you make us laugh, you make us cry. So Christina Clancy received a PhD from UWM over there. She has taught writing at Beloit College and is the author of 2 novels, The Second Home and Shoulder Season, which is now in paperback. And I want to say The Second Home, which is now in little baby paperback. We don't have that today. So I said to Jason, why don't we have a pile of mass markets of Shoulder Season? And he gave me a dirty look. So with that said, please give a big hand, Jean Thompson and Christina Clancy.
Thanks, Daniel. What day is this you've been in business?
No, it was right at the top. It's 4857.
4857. Okay. Thank goodness for Daniel. This is so much fun. I see so many people I know in the audience. Thank you for coming out tonight. It's so great to be with Jean Thompson. Have you ever followed a band and you go see that band at little bars, like dive bars, and you feel like you're really special because you know this band, and then all of a sudden they become famous and everybody acts like they know that band and they love that band? I'm a little bit like, you're like my band. Oh. I started following you. You've always been famous, but I started following Jean when I studied with her at Indiana University for a summer, when I just was starting to think about becoming a writer. And I was just toying around with short stories, and I bought Who Do You Love?, your short story anthology. And I was completely blown away. You can tell when Daniel was talking about all your accolades and places you've been published, and Daniel called you a writer's writer, and you really are, like, people who read not just for plot, but for beautiful sentences and rhythm and cadence. That, like, you're somebody that I turn to when I just want to feel inspired about the written word and the magic and transportation of it. And so I became hooked on your short stories. I really think that you're one of the best short story writers of our age. And if you get a chance to read any of Jean's short stories, I'm not exaggerating. Like, she's really remarkable. And I always teach, I was just talking earlier about, I always teach your short story, Fire Dreams. That was in the New Yorker.
Which I can hardly remember writing.
Don't tell me that. And then all your novels, I've just loved and appreciated. And so I was thrilled when Daniel said that we could do an event for the Poet's House. And the book came to me, and I sometimes, because I have a lot of books to read and I blurb some books, I sometimes feel like reading, it's not a chore, but it feels like work sometimes. Like, I've got to get to this pile. And I started reading The Poet's House, and I had the most wonderful experience where it was a treat to read. And I wanted to read your book slowly because I wanted to savor it. And so I just give myself a little bit of time, at like special times in the day when I knew I just appreciate it and I wasn't too tired to read, because I wanted to like actively read your prose. So that's how much I love this book. And it has all of your characteristic humor. It has a great story. It's just a treasure. And I'm so excited that you guys are here to hear Jean talk about it. And you're getting such great reviews, and it makes me feel so good.
Gosh, thank you. I don't know if I can live up to half of that. But first, thank you all for coming out in the heat and the COVID and everything else. We were without audiences for so long, and it's great to be able to have an event again, an actual event. Let me thank Daniel and this bookstore. Daniel, those pants, I've got it. They're high vis. High vis. You could work on a road crew.
What's that line in your book where the character Doug is being described as his outfit, and you say something like, he's someone for whom you might say enjoys color
And
or
I think
something like
Oscar,
that.
Yeah, he was not afraid of color.
Yeah.
So, but, so thank you for having me. And, this is a wonderful bookstore. I hope you all appreciate what, an absolutely excellent, first-rate, wonderful treasure this is. I can hardly get through the door to the back of the room because I want to stop. Oh, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. I mean, I kind of want to. I won't say I want to work here, but I want to play here. This is a first-rate, wonderful bookstore, and obviously has this great calendar of events. So thank you all for supporting that. Miss Christie here, I'll tell a little story on you. Well, it's a nice story. We met because she was in a workshop at Indiana University Writers Conference, and she submitted a story, and I'd read it, and I thought, wow, that's good. So I see her. We hadn't met yet, even as a group, and I saw her in the hall. I said, "Oh, Christy, hey, I liked your story," and she's like, you told me later, wow, I was so moved that you liked my story. But you know what? It was really a good story. It was the beta test story.
Yeah.
You remember that? Of course you do. And she has gone on from there and built many accolades and only gotten better and better and better. So, okay. Last night at the event that I had with my friend Donna Seaman, first my phone rang and then her phone rang. That was bad form. I just turned mine off. But thank you. But all this is to say, if your phones ring, it's okay. I get it. Sometimes that happens, and the Poets House, I'm going to read just a little bit from it in just a minute. And of course, we'll talk about where it came from, and we'll take your questions too at some point, I'm sure. But if you're in the writing game for long enough, you start having opinions about it and about writers and about how things go, and so that was, I suppose, the genesis of it. I'm going to try reading from my laptop, which is sometimes a little tricky, especially holding this other device. And I'll tell you, just so you know what's going on. I can't read very well with my contacts in, but I also can't see very well with my contacts out. So I have one contact in and one out. And I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing a little bit of this. So if I make that kind of a face, you know what it is. But this is from, I don't know, about 100 pages into the book, something like that. A chapter called Gossip. And it talks about writers' conferences. And I bet somebody out there has been to a writers' conference. No, okay. Well, the really fun ones, at least, in my experience, are where people really misbehave, and strange things are done, and let he or she who is without sin cast the first stone. So this is one of the characters, one of the poets, Oscar, who's a character I have a lot of affection for, but he's also the most flamboyant and eccentric and peculiar of them. So so this is a little bit about Oscar, and the characters in this. Carla is my narrator, a young woman who has kind of taken up with this group of poets, kind of accidentally fell into it. Viridian is the kind of poet queen, older poet, older woman who has a kind of a cult-like reputation. And there's Sasha, who's another poet. Am I messing up your volume readings or something? You just tell me, give me a prompt or something if I am. So this is just a little bit just to give you a flavor of it. Oscar returned from Maine in the writers' conference, spent, exalted, and in love. Heartsick, he went for long, solitary hikes up Mount Tam and returned to Viridian scratched and sore, or he holed up in his room, writing furiously, emerging only for supplies of alcohol and sandwiches. The lady was a fiction writer, another one of the conference staff. She lived in Montreal. They were going to see each other again as soon as possible. He couldn't find his passport. It was expired anyway. How long did it take to get a passport renewed? Or wait, somebody told him you only needed a passport to enter Canada if you flew. He could drive. Then he would only need a driver's license. They'd met the first night and talked for hours. So incredible. It was as if they'd been saving up words their entire lives just to share with each other. Things had progressed from there. She was brilliant, or as Oscar said, blazing brilliant. He'd bought all her books. He was reading them straight through. She was reading his books too. She completely got them, what he was doing, what he was trying to do. He was writing new poems for her, about her. He hadn't stopped writing since they'd met. They'd both cried when they had to leave. They were inconsolable. They'd talked every day since, emailed, wrote. He always falls in love at conferences, Sasha said. She and Viridian and I sat on the screen porch. Oscar had been pacing back and forth on the breezeway, oblivious to us. Then he stalked into the house. We were drinking iced coffee and watching the sprinklers I'd set up send fine bands of spray through the air. If you looked into the water just right, you saw a rainbow. He's not the only one, Viridian said, these shipboard romances. She sighed as if she'd witnessed too many such cruises. At least it's not a student this time. I know Irene. She's quite nice, Sasha added. I'm fairly sure she has a long-term partner in Montreal. I hope she's decent to Oscar, lets him walk away with his poems and some beautiful memories. We're shocking Carla, Viridian warned. No, you're not, I said, but they sound like teenagers. This made them both laugh. Exactly, Viridian said. It's always passionately sincere, and it's going to last forever. I'm so glad I'm not young anymore, Sasha said. That helps. My God, the abject humiliation of falling in love. She might not have been young, but she was pretty enough to be able to say things like that and not seem pathetic. And she has a kind of a berserk lover who stalks her, and attends to her and fetches her things and watches while she's swimming so that she won't drown. And so that's her experience with it. Okay, we're skipping a little bit here to get back to Oscar. The same day, the same scene. I was about, Carla is driving away. I was about halfway to downtown Fairfax when I saw Oscar stumping along the side of the road and slowed to see if he wanted a ride. Thanks, he said, hauling himself into the passenger seat. A gust of heat, and I couldn't help noticing sweaty odor accompanied him. You look terrible, I told him, and he said, yeah, so what? But he did. His long hair was unwashed and stringy, and his big loose face was mottled with uneven sunburn. I wouldn't dream of saying anything so frank and disrespectful to Viridian, but Oscar was different. He all but invited you to participate in his problems. Seriously, are you all right? Seriously, I need a drink. Come with me. I can't, I said. People probably got tired of me saying it, but he looked so miserable that I told him I'd have one drink. Then I had to meet Aaron, a boyfriend, for dinner in San Rafael. Oscar said, oh, sure, he got it. Celebrate, fornicate. Don't worry about him for a minute. That is no country for old men, the young in one another's arms, birds in the trees. Stop. He was always quoting Yeats for some twisted reason of his own. We went to one of the live music bars, too early still for any event crowd. The bartender knew Oscar, and as did the waitress. We settled into a corner booth, and the waitress brought him a red-eye beer, which I guess was his usual. I ordered an IPA. How's Irene? I asked, figuring that love had everything to do with it. That's all over. He got some of the red-eye into him and looked around the empty room at something that wasn't there. Well, what happened? Nothing happened and kept happening. After a while, you get the message. Was there somebody else? I asked. Did she have of course there was somebody else. He swatted away a piece of hair that was interfering with his glass. I knew that. I knew it from the start. We could have worked it out. I didn't dare ask how. I said I was sorry. I didn't know what else to tell him. I was unaccustomed to consoling grown men about their sketchy love affairs. She was an honest person. I valued that in her. Well, you shouldn't talk about her like she's dead. Well, to me, she is. So I took out my phone and texted Aaron, need help on mission of mercy, Oscar. It was a couple of minutes before he got back to me. Oscar complained that he thought there was something wrong with his heart. No joke, not a metaphor. He had these episodes of lightheadedness. I said he hadn't been eating or sleeping right or taking care of himself, but he should see a doctor just in case. He said, what was the point? I said, then what was the point of complaining about it? He said I was one of those heartless, practical people, wasn't I? My phone blipped. You're kidding, Aaron had texted back. Lost love. Death talk, please. Let me guess, you're at a bar. I texted the emoji for crying and one for a glass of beer, and he texted back asking which bar. Okay, that's all I'll read. That's just a little flavor of poets in love.
I saw Jean read once when we were at Indiana University, and you were working on a novel set in a women's prison, and you had everybody sing. Everyone in the audience was singing.
Well, it's just my workshop.
It was the.
I think it was just the workshop, because the piece I was writing had a hymn in it, the woman at the well. I said, come on, will you guys do this with me? Just at conferences, people read every night, all the time. We had to do something a little different. So I led my workshop in song. I won't do that to you tonight, I promise.
It's really a treat to hear you read your work in your own voice, though. So can you tell us a little bit, first of all, I'm curious about how you describe the book to people. Like, what's the book about? So if somebody's watching this video and they haven't read it yet.
Okay, I'll give you just a quarter cup of plot. There's a young woman, Carla. She's about 21, and she's kind of drifting along. She's a drifty girl. She's working for a landscaper. She's good at that sort of thing, digging holes and putting plants in and physical labor. The book is set in Northern California, by the way, and part of the rationale is it's a love letter to Northern California, a place I enjoyed living. So she's a little frustrated. She has a learning difference. It's difficult for her to read words on a page, and that's handicapped her from really, getting much of an education. And her nearest and dearest, her mother, her boyfriend, everybody else is always saying, you should be applying yourself more. You're perfectly intelligent. You just need to try hard. You can't work for a landscaper all your life. You have to be, that annoying phase in life where adults are telling you what you ought to be doing. And so she's aware of that, and she's aware of her kind of limitations and frustrations and lack of self-confidence. Well, one of her landscaping clients turns out to be this poet Viridian, and she doesn't know anything about poetry, but kind of comes to know her a little bit, and then goes to a reading that Viridian is giving, and listening to poetry as opposed to trying to get through it on a page. She sees the light. Somehow this really gets to her, and she goes, I like poetry. I thought I hated it, because it was so hard and everything. And part of the, I'll talk a little bit more about why are they poets and not fiction writers? I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But anyway, so she falls into this world of Viridians and the people who associate with her, and the fellow poets and the acolytes and the wannabes, and she gets very involved in a way that's probably not entirely realistic with the literary world and literary magazines and writers' conferences. But I had a lot of fun with it, because here's a young person who really doesn't know what the hell, the first thing about who these people are, what they're doing, and why they're behaving this way. She's like the naturalist watching the sandhill cranes or something, and now they're flapping their wings and dancing for each other. So she's our guide to the world of, as I imagine it, poetry and poets. That's a long-winded explanation, but yeah.
No, I think
Good.
that's great because as I was reading this, because I've taught and you've taught English, and to me, you could think of this as literary fiction. I was actually reading this as fantasy. I'm like, wow, someone who's never appreciated poetry appreciates it. It matters to her, like something that a lot of people are so dismissive of poetry. When you talk to them, I've had people say, oh, I hate poetry. I'm like, how can people be so dismissive about an entire art form? And so I loved, it was very cathartic to read about someone who discovers it and enjoys it and appreciates it. Did it feel that way to you when you were writing?
Well, there's a little bit of fantasy to it, yeah, of course. But I guess I wanted to stick up for poetry and by extension literature, and I made them poets instead of fiction writers because there's a way in which I actually venerate poets. Fiction writers, maybe we're just trying to get to that next paycheck or something, and poetry is much more art for art's sake. I really do, and I mean, poets are the priests of language, in a way. But they also want to be read and understood. And you can get into some really interesting arguments with people going, well, but I don't understand it, and it ought to be made so I can understand it better. Well, maybe you should meet them halfway and try to bring a little bit to it. The scariest thing about writing a book is I had to write some poems. And I mean, believe me, if somebody, an actual poet or anybody else said, Thompson, you kind of suck at that. Stick to fiction. So far, at least so far, I've gotten away with it. But I want people to love poetry. And to make the effort at going towards something that maybe makes a few more demands on you, just as certain kinds of fiction make demands on you. And I think that's what modernist literature does, is it asks more of an audience, and Carla, she's actually, at one point she stops and says, it's not that I knew nothing about this stuff. Back in school, it was like, I must go down to the sea again, to the lonesome sea in the sky. And all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by, that there's something that's gotten to her in terms of rhythm and language, that now she can make that other leap, into this other world. And as the book goes on, and I had to fight my editor over this, saying, Carla sounds like she's so much smarter by the end of the book. It's like, yes, yeah, thank you. That she's growing in her awareness, that she's and she's working out some of her own issues too. Who is she and what is she meant to do and what is she good at and what should she try to do?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of poetry as transcendence. It's a way to transcend the mundane in this book. And I think that's part of why I enjoyed reading it so much. Because for Carla, you get the sense her whole life could exist without her ever transcending, without ever being in this kind of more exalted mental space.
Or more ambitious personally, because that's part of it too. She's been sort of content to dig holes in the dirt, which is an honorable job, by the way, and I value people who can do it, but she's always being egged on, and she feels a little bit, herself, that no, this isn't what I was built to do. So
yeah, one thing I think that's really impressive about the book is that when you talk about it's honorable for her to work, I feel like you're really even in the way you describe everyone. Like the poet is not, you can kind of make fun of poets, but at the same time you venerate them, and you can kind of show how Carla could aspire to more, yet you don't make fun of her for being where she is. You might like poke fun at the people who act like that, but I thought that was really, you were very even-handed with your characters.
Oh, thank you. Well, there are definitely some I'm out to get and and to make fun of and to humiliate. But that's just me having fun.
It's funny you said that, because I was talking to my editor about your book, and I said, oh, I love this book, and the reason why is because it just feels like a book you loved writing. Like you had a blast writing it.
I
And you,
did. I
yeah.
did. Yeah.
can you talk about like how this book came to be?
Well, I had a general subject matter and a setting. And I knew that there was going to be this kind of mysterious figure of Viridian, the queen of poetry, who is not necessarily famous, except among people who really know her and value her. And then I had to invent someone to tell the story, and that's Carla. That's the naive character, a first person narrator. And Carla, she was fun to write. She's a smart ass. She doesn't put up with much, but at the same time, there's moments where she just kind of collapses, out of anguish, and she's done the wrong thing, or she's just not worthy enough. But enjoying it, there's a lot of comedy in it too. There's a lot of comedy in the book. At least I hope there is. There's times I wanted it to be funny. I'll put it that way. There's places I am absolutely mocking, different personality characters and characteristics. No poets were harmed in the writing of this book. They are not caricatures of writers I know. There are a few stories and anecdotes that maybe made it into the telling, but there is not a recognizable, or should not be a recognizable, actual real person in the batch. Although at some Indiana conference, there was the woman that came and ate all the bagels. She was a little kind of pipsqueak gal that would come in every morning to, there's a coffee room, come and, get your day going. And there were bagels, and she would just kind of shovel the bagels down as fast as she could. And she was in my workshop, and she was kind of disassociative. She'd start talking about the manuscript or whatever, and then it would go into whatever, some other planet that she was on. And somebody else, there was a guy in this workshop who was a practicing psychiatrist. And this is how writers conferences get. I said, hey, could I talk to you for a minute? Just your professional opinion about what's her name? She eats all the bagels, and she, and he was very even-handed and said, well, she might just like starchy food. And she seems to be taking care of herself, and she functions, and no, I'm not worried about her. Well, thank you. But there are some wild things that happen, not all of them louche and scandalous, although there is that too. So, it was some workshop that I was teaching, and they give you the manuscripts ahead of time. And I read this one thing, and I went, I'm just offended that I have to teach this. This is so bad. This is raccoons in outer space having sex or something. It was just, come on. Did anybody read this? Or did the guy just write a check for his tuition? And you have conferences with everybody, and this guy, he comes in for his conference. He was a funny looking guy. Like they say in Fargo, oh, he was just funny looking, more than most people. Kind of no neck and stubby arms and everything. He talked kind of funny, and I said, well, so Bill, trying to make small talk because I don't want to talk about his story. What line of work are you in? He said, well, that's kind of a moot point, because last year I won $34 million in the state lottery. And how interesting. So what have you done with your, well, I bought a new truck, and Mom got to quit her job at the Navy Yard or whatever. And then people in the workshop were very kind to his story. as they can be, which was fine. And then he himself, I really got to appreciate, he had a sense of humor. But it didn't come through in his writing, but but there were times he said a couple things that made me laugh out loud. One of them was about, stiff characters and comic characters. He said, well, whenever I see Margaret Dumont, I start looking around for the Marx Brothers. It's just so. I mean, I've got years of this stuff. I've been doing this a long time. I've got anecdotes and stories, and the one about the guy who used to show up at girls' apartments saying, "I have to have sex with you because." It'll be good for my back. That's I'm not going to attribute that, but that's taken from life. So, after a while, you got to write the book. You got to write the book. Yeah, so there was that side of just having fun with some of these things that you've witnessed. And the thing about writers' conferences, and in the book, there's 3 chapters where I take them to a writers' conference, because that was really the fun part. And it's not that everybody is off naked in the woods, although some of them are, but I think it's a matter, and you can tell me, you don't really get to be a writer in most of your daily life if you are one. I mean, I can go to the grocery without people going, oh, is that her? I mean, which is just fine with me. Nobody has to make much of me. I just want to get some yogurt here, but you get to a writer's conference and you get to inhabit that part of your persona that finally, yes, I'm a writer, or I want to be a writer. And all those egos kind of come into play and kind of mix around and churn around and clash or find each other or decide that it's true love. So just as a phenomenon, writers getting to be writers, I had fun with that too.
So is that why Carla's not aspiring to be a writer? Did you know from the beginning, first of all, that it would be Carla who would be your narrator? And then did you know that she was not going to want that?
I certainly knew she was going to be the narrator, and I was pretty sure as it went along that no, I'm not going to turn her into a poet. In fact, there's at least one place in the book where she goes, she's broken up with her boyfriend, and she thinks, I could write a poem about how it's raining today, and it's, raining in my heart or something. She goes, nah, nah, I'm getting pretty good at poetry if I realize I would write crap, so, and I didn't want to turn her into a poet. She has another destiny. She finds another path. That's all I'll say about that now. But no, I didn't want to, there's another character that I do make fun of. It's a young man who studied poetry and decides he's in love with Carla, and wants her to read the poems that he's written about her. And she keeps going, yeah, get away, and he's just completely oblivious and completely, all caught up in himself. And I didn't want that for her.
Yeah, I kind of felt like Carla was in good hands because she's going through relationship issues, which in your 20s is so common. And I think there's like 2 love stories. There's her own love story, like trying to work things out, and then her falling in love with poetry in this wacky world she's in. But I felt like also there was a sense of like adulthood, like she kind of needed people who were older than she was to guide her along. And I wonder if you could say something about that, because I felt like that was really, and with Viridian, growing older, but also becoming like this kind of sage person for her, a role model and mentor. Yeah. And I was happy that Carla found someone to shepherd her into the world.
There's certainly mentorship going on and role models. And I mean, Carla has a mother who is very vocal about what Carla ought to be doing and well-meaning in her way, but she needs to find another mother, sort of, as we all do, need to find other figures that can fill that need. And Viridian is, she has her own secrets and her own mysteries and her own challenges, which I had no clue what they were as I was writing the book. It's like, you better come up with something here, Thompson, Mm-hmm. So there's a plot that takes that on. But Viridian is also drawn to Carla because Carla is a young, what is my favorite novelist, James Conrad, say, the empty vessel politely asking to be filled. You know, I mean, she's young, she's eager, she's naive. It's all new to her. She doesn't know anything, and there's a pleasure, I think, in that older person observing that, and you know, and giving advice. The advice Carla gets from her mother is sit up straight and pluck your eyebrows. You know, well, that's useful too, but she's looking for other things. And you know, there are other lessons drawn from some of these other characters that inhabit, and I mean, there aren't any actual people that I know. I mean, I just don't do that anymore, base characters on people, but there are types, you know, the cult figure, the flamboyant, yeah, eccentric, that's Oscar. There's there are characters who are trying very hard to be poets and are very joyless and humorless about it, but you know, they're going to do it. And you know, acolytes and earnest strivers, and you know, there's a whole gallery of types there that I had. And you know, you can learn from people that aren't really admirable too, as she does. You know, she's a good observer, so she sees some of the the downside. This is a fantasy in that there's a portion of the plot in which people are going to make money, a lot of money off of some poems. Couldn't be less real. You know, once in a blue moon, you know, maybe, but I kind of build this up so there's some intrigue about what happened to those poems, and it's a kind of a tabloid side of situation too, you know. And then he killed himself, and oh my goodness, you know, in the way that Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes had some kind of tabloid element. So yeah, I mean, I did take that liberty. There are people with fabulous amounts of money that are going to cast it upon poets. Haha, you know, we should live so long.
You had made a comment when you had your book launch a few days ago that I was watching, and you said something about plot, like how plot, like it matters and it doesn't matter. Like, what do you think about plot, and how did the plot come to be for this story? And how do you just deal with plot as someone who's working on a book right now and needs mentorship? Like, I mean, can you talk about how you work with plot and how plot fit into this story?
You know, I'm not. It's not my special gift. You know, if it was, I would write police procedurals or something. And I absolutely admire authors that I don't admire for anything else. You know, John Grisham books. You know, wow, that Tom Cruise sure can run fast. You know, or wow, they really kept that going. And oh, look, and then that other element came in. I mean, I'm just not that good at it. But you got to have a plot. You got to have something happen in fiction. Otherwise, it's how happy we were and what we ate for dinner. You know, there has to be some conflict. There has to be momentum. So, you know, plot to me is always a kind of artifice. Yeah, it's not the heart of any book. And I could kind of extract the plot of this like you do the bones from a fish, you know, and say, oh, look, we still have this tasty fish, you know, because I wrote all this other stuff. But, you know, you need the spine, you know, you need, and you know, like I said, I'm just not that good. I admire writers who can really serve up a nifty plot, you know, something that snaps shut like a box, you know. I mean, wow, how'd they do that? So I did the best I could. It's sort of like writing the poems, you know.
Well, I'd read your laundry or your grocery list. Like, you know, it's fine. So
good, because a lot of times I can't even read my own writing. You know, is that ground beef or green beans? You know, I mean, really, it's bad. You know.
Did you have any problems when you were working on this book? Like any times you got stuck, or did it just kind of flow out of you?
I think plot problems. I think trying to, and in inventing some of the apparatus that went along with these fabulous people who were going to, uh, devote, devote money and effort and everything. I invented somebody who's referred to as an art gangster. He runs a foundation that I absolutely made up, that funds arts and artists, and is very prestigious, and he's a little bit of a wheeler dealer and a collector, and everybody's always kind of fawning over him. And by the way, the poets in the book have actual money problems. Nobody's making a great living, and Viridian needs money, and there are gaps in the finances, which is, I think, true, absolutely true. More people would be poets if it paid well.
I don't know any rich poets.
No, or they're rich from something else. Pardon?
Oh, I guess
she's doing okay.
Yeah.
Of course, she models too. Yeah. But well, yeah, no, she's making the most of her moment, isn't she? Yeah. And more power to her. Yeah.
And one thing that's great about this book, I think, is that I was actually kind of, I was promoting the book on my social media, and I said, if you've never been to an event, a book event, this would be the perfect one to go to, because it's about someone who's kind of new to book events. And it's like, maybe I'll give this a try. And I thought it'd be kind of funny if we seated everyone like in church when you go to a wedding, like all the poets on one side and the people who've never been to an event before on the other. But it's a book that's good for both sides. Like, you could have people who have never read poetry, never cared about poetry, read this book, and you can have poets read this book. In fact, what are poets telling you? Have you had any poets reach out?
They've been mercifully silent. But I mean, it's also a coming of age story, which many people can enjoy and relate to. That this is Carla coming into her own, and it's a first person narrator, which made it, I think, a little bit easier for me. Because she was an easy character to inhabit in a way. It's not a mode that I work in a whole lot, but somehow it suited her, because she can make all these little mordant comments about, there he went again, So really, there's that aspect, that it's really her story, not just about a bunch of poets, And I suppose she could have fallen in with a bunch of plumbers, and had kind of similar revelations, although it wouldn't have been as much fun. I would have had to write about plumbing.
Well, as a writer, I felt like I was like, I know this world. It kind of reminded me of Art School Confidential, that movie. Where everyone gets to know each other, and then at the end of the first workshop, somebody leans over and says, "Oh, there's always one of each type." In art school, it's like the rich kid, the genius, the pervert, so
oh boy.
yeah, I felt.
Well, I wonder, sometimes people have questions, sometimes people are happy to not have questions, but let me give you a chance to ask questions, and if you don't have any, I'll do something else. Walk and chew gum. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, Barb.
Was there any type of metaphor that you were trying to read between the county, the hopeful nature of poetry, the earthy mama, Viridian, and yet this youthful discovery? Like, I always find problems be planting, and sometimes plants don't get enough water.
That's
and it
right.
just felt like such a gorgeous metaphor for what it means to still have faith in a day not burning out.
Okay. Yeah. Not consciously was I trying to do that. I really just kind of missed Northern California, which is a beautiful place. And well, now they have droughts and heat waves like everybody else. But there's a place where, in the book, where they go dancing at Rancho Nicasio. And I used to live in Nicasio, so I was indulging myself a little bit.
It sounds like you could use that. That was pretty.
Yeah, please. Please write a review. Yeah. Yeah. Make me sound smart. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it? No, that was a happy accident. And I will tell you, there are many times that publishers come to you and say, we're just all so excited about this cover. And you're going, really? Yeah, I mean, I've certainly rejected my share, of them. And what did my agent say about one cover once? It looks like a Clearasil ad, that's pretty bad. No, this is, the cover really stands in for, I guess, the success of the book so far, is that they just nailed it, Absolutely, yeah. And I don't even know exactly who was responsible for it, but they wanted that kind of afternoon light, the kind of fading, the sun is going down. They wanted it to look, it looks a little bit like a Matisse to me, the shadows and the fruit that's a little bit chunky. So, and if I hadn't liked the cover, if they, you always get what they call consultation, which means we're going to go ahead and do what we want anyway, but you're welcome to not like it. Although I have succeeded in arguing them out of, what was the publisher called me once about and said, I just don't understand why you don't like this. I said, David, it looks like a bunch of turds floating in water, 'cause I had to say that, and there's a whole branch of criticism or book reviewing that reviews covers and talks about what's trendy and what's the trend now, blobs of color. There's a lot of blobs of color out there.
The trend is the cover of my first book. It's like on every cover coming up. As
Oh.
Maggie Smith wrote in one of her blog posts, my cover designer and I are like, why are all these books looking exactly like The Second Home?
Why did they do this to me? Yeah. But no, I mean, it was the first thing they came up with. It was a hit. I was so happy to say, yes, I love it, because you want to be able to say that. You don't want to have to go to war. You don't want to have to tell them that they're wrong and stupid and, whatever. I mean, nobody really wants to do that. So I was happy. Yes, sir.
Back to the plot.
Yeah.
Do you kind of know where you're going toward the end, or do the characters take you there?
Characters and circumstances take me there. There are a lot of things I didn't know, and I don't want to say too much about the plot directions because some people haven't read it yet. But no, I didn't know how I was going to sew this all up or pull it together. And then my editor chimed in about some of the, we need to know more about this. We need to know. You need more scenes about this. Okay. But no, some things were just kind of happy accidents, or how am I going to get out of this corner that I painted myself into? Oh, I will paint a ladder on the wall. Then I will climb the ladder. So no, I don't. And I think it's okay to not know if that is kind of where your question is heading, because what's the fun in that? I mean, unless you're retelling a famous story, or your version of, a myth or something. Part of the fun is not knowing how it's going to turn out. I mean, if I knew exactly how everything was going to be turned out, it would be like filling in an outline. I'd get bored with it. Yeah.
In the back.
In the back, yes. Or this lady, yeah. Oh.
How long did it take you to write, and along with that, can you talk a little bit about the process to write every day?
I try to, yeah. If I'm actively writing, I mean, writers are so dull. I mean, that's sometimes that's all we do. You get up in the morning, you walk the dog, you start the laundry, you sit down, you sit your butt in a chair, and you try and write for 2 or 3 hours or whatever. That's what I do. And then, since I am dull, in the evening, if I'm not doing anything else, I do, rinse, repeat, walk dog, dry laundry, sit in chair. And I think perseverance is something that will guide you and help you more than brilliance and more than talent. And, I envy poets. I think they can be brilliant in starts and fits. Fiction writers your butt has to sit in that chair and you have to grind out those pages and you have to keep at it. And, poets work hard too, but, if you're just going to be producing something at length, you'd better be working a fair amount of hours, I also would say, however writers get their work done is the way it ought to get done. If you need to drive a van to the Rockies and camp for 5 weeks with just you and the bears and write furiously, fine, and then come back and do nothing, fine, do it. Do what works. Do what works and don't listen to me. But the way my process works is slow and steady. And what did Joan Didion say? It's like on the third day, if you do not go out into the garden, if you spend your first day really trying and you spend a second day really trying to get something going, and if you do not go out into the garden and distract yourself, on the third day, something will come to you. You will have worked it out. Is that kind of your experience with writing, or do you go about it in some different way?
I'm kind of lazy, so I sit at my desk, I find other things.
Oh, we all do. Oh, we all do. That crossword puzzle is just dying to.
But from
For
now
my
on, I
attention.
think in our heads, we're all going to hear your voice saying on the third day.
It's Joan.
On the third day.
It's Joan Didion's
I know, but I'm going to
voice,
hear it in
yes.
your voice.
Yeah, well, I do think you need discipline. And you need to internalize that discipline so that it's a habit. When I was young and a young writer and really new to it, I thought that inspiration came and seized you, and it made you do creative stuff, and they'd have to come and leave your meals on a tray at the door because you were so, so overwhelmed by this spirit. And instead you find yourself on a bar stool going, I really ought to go get my writing done. That it's work. It's work. If you wait for inspiration, you're never going to get anything done. Or
Well, and I guess I find also that when I'm writing and it's not good, then it's hard to keep writing.
Mhm.
Because I'm judging myself and saying, well, what is the point?
well, you can't pre-edit yourself. You can't. Well, you can, but it's not good. You have to kind of go for it, and you have to. And I remember doing this. I remember I used to, back when we had pages and typewriters and stuff. I'd take those pages. I would say, look, I got these pages done. Look, they're this thick. See, I actually got something done. I got something done. Screens are a little more nebulous. I mean, who cares? Print some stuff out. Maybe you'll feel better.
Great. There's a question in the back.
Yeah.
I actually don't have a question, but I have a testimonial synchronicity comment. And what I mean by that is I'm Googling, looking for poetry events nearby.
Yeah.
And it said you may be interested in some of these things, and it came up this particular event, and I just happened to be reading this.
Oh.
This is a synchronicity.
Okay. Oh.
Chapter in Gospel, which is what I just finished.
Oh, good. Oh, yeah. I would say you're in the right place. Thank you.
It was
My-
meant to be.
The media campaign worked. Not only did you read the book, but you found the event. So. Well, and I have no social media. My friends have social media for me. But, I'm just like a dinosaur, man. I mean, I don't have Instagram. I don't have TikTok. I don't have Facebook. I think I started a Facebook account once and then tried to delete it and I couldn't do that. So now I have you know, 85,000 Facebook friend suggestions. It's like, go away. I mean, it helps sometimes to be old. You know, there's stuff you just don't have to do. I don't have to do social media. Somebody else will do that for me. You know, even my website, somebody does that for me. It's like, you know, would you put some stuff on my website, please? I mean, I work a little more closely with them than that, but you know, I'm too old school. You know,
But we found you here.
so we
So,
did. So we
Yeah,
did.
you guys are wonderful. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
out.
Really, I appreciate
and
it. And
Thank you,
thank
Jean,
you. And,
for a great book.
I'm happy to sign anybody's book or anybody else's book.
And might I
actually.
say, they make a wonderful gift. So,
For
So we're going to have you sign at the front.
okay, I'll do that.
Books
Thank
are
you.
also at the front desk. Bring yours, if you brought yours today, or you can buy one from us. They are 20% off today. And Hulu. And thank you very much to Jean Thompson and Christina Clancy, and to our technical director. And thank you all, of course, for coming most of all, because we wouldn't have a bookstore without you. I'll see you in another.
thank you.